They say your best friend is the person who knows you better than anyone. Someone you laugh with, cry with, and share every little detail of your life with. But what happens when that connection turns into something more? What happens when you find yourself wishing for a deeper connection, one that they might not even realize you want? And what happens when you have to make a choice? Keep them close and suffer in silence, or let them go to save yourself. This is the story of how I fell in love with my best friend and why I had to make the hardest decision of my life: to walk away completely. I remember the first time I met her like it was yesterday. It was through mutual friends at a casual get-together. She wasn't the loudest person in the room, but there was something magnetic about her presence. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person that mattered when she talked to you. Her laugh was infectious. Her stories were captivating, and her kindness was undeniable. We hit it off immediately. By the end of that night, it felt like we'd known each other forever. Over the weeks that followed, we became inseparable. We texted constantly, hung out almost every weekend, and shared things with each other that we hadn't told anyone else. She became my safe space, my confidant, my person. Our friendship wasn't just surface level either. We supported each other through tough times. Her messy breakup, my struggles at work, and everything in between. She was the first person I called when something went wrong, and the first person I celebrated with when things went right. I felt like I'd found my soulmate, but in a platonic way. Or at least, that's what I told myself at the time. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment when my feelings for her changed. Maybe it was the night we stayed up until 3 a.m. talking about our biggest fears and dreams, and I realized how deeply I admired her. Maybe it was the time she showed up at my door with my favorite takeout after a rough day, and I felt a warmth I couldn't explain. Or maybe it was just a slow buildup of moments, her smile, her laugh, the way she looked at me, that made me see her in a completely different light. At first, I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was just a phase, a fleeting crush that would pass. But it didn't. In fact, the feelings only grew stronger. I started noticing little things about her that I hadn't before. The way her eyes sparkled when she talked about something she was passionate about. The way she bit her lip when she was deep in thought. The way she lit up a room just by being in it. She wasn't just my best friend anymore. She was the person I wanted to be with. But there was a problem. She didn't feel the same way. Or if she did, she never showed it. To her, I was her best friend, her rock, her safe place. And I couldn't bring myself to jeopardize that by telling her how I felt. So I kept it to myself. I convinced myself that staying silent was the right thing to do, that it was better to have her as a friend than to risk losing her altogether. But the more time we spent together, the harder it became. Keeping my feelings hidden was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Every time she talked about a guy she was interested in, it felt like a dagger to my heart. And the worst part, I had to smile and pretend to be happy for her. I had to listen to her gush about how amazing he was, how excited she was for their date, and how much she liked him. Meanwhile, all I wanted to do was scream, "What about me? Why can't you see that I'm right here?" There were moments when I thought about telling her how I felt. I'd imagine the conversation in my head, picturing her reaction. Sometimes I'd think she'd be surprised but open to the idea. Other times, I'd imagine her gently letting me down, saying she didn't feel the same way. The fear of losing her, of making things awkward and ruining our friendship, always stopped me. So I stayed silent and tried to focus on being the best friend she needed. But as time went on, it became harder to hide my feelings. I started pulling away without even realizing it. I'd cancel plans, take longer to reply to her messages, and avoid deep conversations. She noticed, of course. She'd ask me if everything was okay, and I'd just brush it off, saying I was busy or tired. But the truth was, it hurt too much to be around her and not be able to tell her how I felt. The breaking point came one night when she called me, her voice filled with excitement. She told me she'd met someone, a guy who made her feel special, who made her laugh, who she could see herself falling for. She asked for my advice, like she always did, and I gave it to her like I always did. But inside, I was breaking. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that I was okay with just being her friend. After that call, I knew I had to make a choice. I could either tell her how I felt and risk losing her, or I could walk away and save myself from the constant pain of unrequited love. It wasn't an easy decision, but in the end, I chose to let her go. I sent her a message, telling her that I needed some space and that it wasn't about her but about me. I didn't go into detail. I didn't tell her about my feelings. I just said I needed time to figure things out and that I hoped she'd understand. And then I cut off contact completely. I unfollowed her on social media, deleted our chat history, and tried to move on. The days and weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I missed her constantly. I missed our late-night talks, our inside jokes, and the way she always knew how to make me smile. But I also knew that I'd made the right decision. As painful as it was, I needed to let her go to find peace within myself. Over time, I started to heal. I threw myself into my work, picked up new hobbies, and reconnected with old friends. I learned to be okay on my own and to find happiness outside of our friendship. And while a part of me will always wonder what could have been, I've made peace with the fact that some things just aren't meant to be. Looking back, I don't regret the decision I made. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone you love is to let them go, especially if holding on is only causing you pain. To anyone out there who's been in a similar situation, I want you to know that you're not alone. Loving someone who doesn't love you back, or who can't love you back in the way you want, is one of the hardest things to go through. But it's also an opportunity to grow, to learn about yourself, and to become stronger. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to let go of someone you loved, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Let's create a space where we can support each other through the tough decisions life throws at us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you found this video helpful or relatable. And remember, sometimes walking away isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.